Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Tonight, we're covering Season 3, Episode 2 of Twin Peaks. I'm here joined, as always, with Professor Pixel. We're counting down every single individual episodes from Season 1 to Season 2 and our first watch of Season 3 of Twin Peaks. Last episode, Professor Pixel, we talked about, wow, adult themes. It's beautifully shot. We got a lot of the old that's modernized with some of the photos. You brought up a lot of the nature pieces, particularly the opening theme, music, something we're familiar with. But I brought up particularly the fact that I like what David Lynch did as far as introducing some old characters, giving them some screen time, giving them just enough of us to go, you know what, that does remind me of Twin Peaks, without any silliness or goofiness with it. And of course, some serious dark matter to it, because this is by far the most mature episode, with the possible exception of Season 1, Episode 1, the debut movie one from about 30 years ago. So going into Episode 2 tonight, we left off with Principal Hastings, potentially getting arrested because he had a chunk of flesh in the trunk of his car. And so it's like, holy crap, what's going on here? We see Cooper's doppelganger out and about. We see good Cooper stuck in the red room. What's going on? What's happening with it here? And all I got to say is that I liked how this episode starts with Bill Hastings in the jail, and he's waiting for his wife, who comes up. And I think this is a great, awesome piece of acting here by Shaggy, whose name escapes me, but we all know who I'm talking about. He does a great job just acting distressed. I said he did a really great job of acting like, oh yeah, it's a mistake. The guy arrested me, who's my high school buddy. He's going to come in and talk to him or whatever. He seems like something's really wrong, because there's a hole in his whereabouts for about 30, 45 minutes. But it turns out when his wife shows up, they have this conversation. And while he's professing his innocence and all that too, she looks really, really, really pissy. And they kind of almost exploded at her, because she's like, I know you're having an affair with Ruth. And he was trying to tell her that, but she's like, no, I already know. She's pissed. And then all of a sudden he goes from, laid back kind of principled dude to meek guy to this fury just comes out of him. And it's just awesome how it comes up from him, because he's like, I know you're having one, and also with somebody else probably too. And she just takes to another level instead of whatever. She's basically like, yeah, whatever, you're going to stay in jail. And she goes to leave, and their lawyer, the one she's screwing around on him with, George, shows up, and he's like, how's it going? And she's like, he knows. And then we get like this transition from here, where there's this like weird, like dark figure in like another cell that's just sitting there, and it just kind of dissolves away before we go into a whole nother scene. I just wanted to stop right there, because I thought this is pretty dark in a continuation. I wanted to get your take on it.
Oh yeah. Well, Matthew Lillard, who's playing Bill Hastings, he does a fantastic job. And whenever he's struggling to say that, yeah, I'm cheating on you, and then she just turns on the I guess the only way to say it is the bitch face.
Yeah. Oh my God.
He himself, he's like, I know you're doing it with George. Somebody else. You're probably screwing with half the town, which is an exaggeration. But that dark figure that's just sitting there in a cell way down the hall, I don't know what the hell that's supposed to be. It's all black, except white eyes. It was disturbing to look at. Then when it fades away and his head just floats off, what the hell?
I thought her acting, the actress in here, and I had to watch it a couple times. At first, I thought it was horrible, because I just wasn't believing her. I don't know how to explain it. Like Matthew Lillard, I'm buying it. And so sometimes, your chemistry with another actor, the timing's off, or you just don't have that magic. And here, I didn't think she did a bad job, because she delivers it. She's pissed. But there was something about the scene where I could almost hear somebody in the back going, yeah, cut, let's do it again. There's something about it that I wasn't believing. And I don't know if she's supposed to be like projecting a certain thing that's going to be something later. Like we've talked about in Season 2, some particularly bad acting scenes, but they were that way for a reason, it looks like. And I don't know if this is one or not. It just really stuck out to me as being where I found myself noticing how bad she seemed rather than the intensity of the scene with Hastings from Matthew Lillard. But I don't know. And then the figure, you're right. I don't know what it's supposed to be. I don't get it either, and I'm okay with that. I'm not going to let that upset me.
No, it's not going to upset me either. It's just, it was really creepy.
Yeah.
But from there, we go back to the Hastings home. We see the wife. What did we say her name was? Crap, I can't remember. But Bill Hastings' wife, Mrs. Hastings, gets home, and she gets inside, and Phyllis, yes. She sees somebody in there, and we recognize Cooper with the long hair still, and he says that she reacted perfectly, just as any human would. And she seems to know him. In the way she's acting, she's not like, what the hell are you doing in my house? No, she's like, what are you doing here? And as she's like walking in, she sees Cooper get out a gun and realize, wait a minute, this isn't going how I wanted. And she turns to run away. And that's when he shoots her. And whenever the shot actually hits her, she seems to glitch from reality for a second. I don't know if you noticed that.
Is that how you took it? Because it's bad CGI. But again, maybe that's intentional.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like a glitch because it shook. Her form shook around her. And that was definitely not, oh, this is an edit. This is bad editing in post. No, that's on purpose. And we then get a close-up of her, and one of her eyes were shot out, just like the librarian we found at the end of the last episode.
Yeah, so automatically we assume that this is the guy she's also banging too, because Matthew Lillard apparently is not enough. A six-figure dude principal is probably boring to a woman like her, and she's obviously dead. So we don't know if we'll hear anything more about what's going on. But obviously there's some sort of connection here. We don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen with Hastings, but at least the wife's out of the picture now. Good riddance. Yeah. We get a nighttime outside shot of Vegas, the Strip, and we see a guy sitting at a table. Looks vaguely familiar, like a B or C level guy. He's handing over a few wads of cash. I always assume those stacks of cash are $10,000, but I don't really know if that's true or not. I can't quite read it. He's handing it to this young looking dude, and they have an interesting conversation where the young dude basically says, hey, Mr. Todd, why do you let him do that to you? Of course, we have no idea who these guys are. We have no idea what this young man means. And when Mr. Todd, the older guy that handed the cash to his assistant, or let's call him that, he thinks about it, and he has an interesting way of describing. He doesn't get pissed. He doesn't stand up. He doesn't deliver this big monologue. He's just staring at the guy's eyes or like that. And his assistant, whose name's Roger, he's like, look, hopefully in your life, you'll never get involved with someone like him. And that's pretty much it for the conversation. And it's kind of good because it's not like, well, let me tell you a story there, young fella, or anything like that at all. It just, you can see Mr. Dodd or Todd, whatever, being like, not scared, but he respects the position that he's in and that he probably can't get out of it. Kind of an interesting too. So Mr. Todd talking to Roger, it's over really quick. Two characters we've never seen before. I don't believe they've been referenced to anything that we've had in season 1 or season 2. Quick scene there. But then from there, it goes to a nice little transition of a train at night. But then we get Cooper's doppelganger. I don't know if we should call him evil Cooper or versus good Cooper. I don't know. I'm trying to be consistent,
I think Doppledale is the way to go.
So Doppledale. He's eating in a restaurant, and he's eating with the three amigos that he picked up in I'm gonna say trailer park. Daria, Ray, and Jack. And I was gonna ask you, before, as I finish this scene up here, they have some conversation going back and forth, and you can tell there's some eye contact going back between three of them. So we know that's going to be a plot thing here. Did you catch what Cooper was eating?
No, I didn't.
I'm sorry, Doppledale was eating.
No, what was it?
Okay. So the one dude's eating a plate of spaghetti, it looks like. And you got the young slick guy who looks like he'd give two shits about Doppledale because he's making eyes with the girl. Doppledale's eating creamed corn. So what was the significance of creamed corn? Do you remember from season 2?
I do remember. I didn't even realize that. In fact, I think I did notice it while actually watching. I just didn't note it down.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. I thought that was just worth saying because there's nothing else on his plate. He's got like a knife. I can't really see anything else on there, but he's got just all this corn, and I'm like, that reminds me of season 2, the first few episodes that as we saw. I mean, with Harold and the neighbors, Mrs. Tremont and the son that did the cream corn thing. I'm just saying. So anyway, what were your take on these scenes?
Yeah, clearly the people that Doppledale's working with just don't like him. I don't know why they're even involved, but they really don't care for Dale. I think Jack, out of the 3, is just there. He's like, okay, yeah. And
he's a spaghetti-eating older dude, which we'll talk about here in a quick scene in a moment. But Ray's the one making sweet eyes at Daria and acting like he's the man. So it's a nice little back and forth between Doppledale and Ray, I think. It means we're going to have conflict.
Yeah, no. And what I really like is this next scene, because we go across the woods. It's dark. And finally, we are taken in as somebody's leading us with a flashlight. Can't tell who it is at first until we cut and see the log lady.
Lens flare. Sorry, I love lens flare.
She goes ahead and she calls Hawk. And it's Hawk actually walking around in the night. She actually calls him out as soon as he picks up, like, where are you walking tonight? And he's like, oh, well, you always know. And she then goes to say that the stars turn and the time presents itself, and he needs to watch carefully. She also says she's too weak to go with him, but he should come by. She has coffee and pie ready to meet him. And after that, they end their conversation. They say goodnight. And that's when Hawk makes it to the pond. I don't know how else to describe it, but the pond that lies just before the curtains, the veil.
It's the entrance to the Red Room. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is what they were searching for.
As he's looking around, he sees the woods, and there are flashes of the curtain to the Red Room. And I was wondering if he was going to go in, but after a moment, we are blinded by a light. It's just, eventually he asks, is it the future or the past? He says that somebody is there before he himself disappears. And then Dale sees Laura Palmer walking over and sitting down. She says, hello, Agent Cooper. She tells him that he can go out now. There's a long moment of silence, and then she asks if he recognizes her. He goes ahead and asks her. She says she feels like she knows her, but sometimes her arms bend back, which is just an echo of what she said when in the first episode of season 1, during the dream. So he goes ahead and asks who she is, and she says she is Laura Palmer. He goes to say, but you're dead. She doesn't disagree. She says, yes, but yet she lives. She then covers her face with her hand before she opens it like a door, and a white light shines bright behind it before she goes ahead and closes it again. There's a long stare between them for a moment before he asks if he's allowed to go. She stands up, slowly walks towards him, leans in. She goes to his ear and whispers. And once she pulls away, there's a moment before she shakes, and the curtains around, sitting again with the one-armed man. And the one-armed man asks Dale, is it the future or is it the past? Dale then looks across the room to see the one-armed man, who was just sitting right by him, is now standing at the edge of the room and motions Dale to follow. For the first time since season 2, Dale is once again walking down that hall where before the statue was positioned, and he follows the one-armed man into a room, and we see this sparkling tree. That's the best way I could say it. It looks like it's electrified all throughout it. And the one-armed man goes to say, this is the evolution of the arm. And that's when the tree starts to speak and say, I am the arm. And it sounds like, and that's the best way to describe it. And the tree goes to ask if Dale remembers his doppelganger. And we flash back to the past where we saw Doppledale for the first time laughing with Bob and then chasing Cooper out of the Red Room. And the tree, the arm as it calls itself, says, for him to go out, his doppelganger must return. And that's when we leave the Red Room.
Yeah, so to me, the way I took this as a bit of a refresher is that you had Mike and Bob, and the Bob spirit obviously possessed Leland Palmer from a very young age, and Leland Palmer ended up raping and killing Laura Palmer, and of course brutally murdering Maddie Ferguson that we talked about. It was one of the best on-screen TV murders I think I've ever seen. It's just very dark. But the idea here is that there's a bunch of other spirits that are alluded to but never really investigated so much. But this one here with Mike is also the little vertically challenged individual, the one that would talk and speak backwards a little bit. So the human host, Philip Gerard, cut his arm off because he, I guess, felt like Bob was trying to, I guess, get a hold of him. So there's like this otherworldly conflict is the way I think of it between these two. You know, whether you think that's heaven or hell, good and evil, yin yang, doesn't really matter. But the idea is that there's confrontation between them. And it makes sense to me that the Doppledale and Good Dale are going to have to switch spots at some point, you know, is what they're alluding to here. And that's going to say, oh, we're going to be watching a lot of Doppledale until a good guy comes out, because we still don't know what Good Dale, if he's on a mission. We don't. That's the whole thing. We're missionless. We don't have a who killed Laura Palmer right now. We don't. This is all, other than Doppledale having something to do with, Hastings, not quite sure. But obviously the people that he's working with, he knows, and that's what we go into next. So the electric tree thing is just kind of bizarre, and we've seen the pale horse before. There's usually death going on around it when we see it. It's a symbol. A death, rides a pale horse, that sort of thing. The four horsemen of the apocalypse, whatever. If you want to get really deep into it, but the actual there's two actually scenes here. One to me is like a transition scene, and it's just basically Doppledale's outside this garage door, and the spaghetti eating guy Jack, he's closing it or whatever, and he's changing cars. Doppledale is. Jack just seems kind of submissive. He doesn't really say too much. He seems like, yes, master kind of guy. It's weird. He kind of grabs Jack's face and just sort of like rubs it like he's giving him like a jaw massage. I don't know how else to explain it. And I'm like, okay, is he going to kill him right now? Snap his neck? No, the scene cuts away. But he's going to a motel at night, and Daria's in some lingerie laying on his bed. So she's obviously wanting to give Doppledale she wants to get boned. Because that's one thing about Twin Peaks. There's a fair amount of boning that goes on, or at least it's alluded to, even though we don't see it. We've already seen some hot bodies already, beautiful women. But Daria's pretty hot in her own way, too. She's got that crazy redheaded look going. And she's like, I got to hang up because she's talking to somebody. And it's like, who's that? Doppledale's not buying any of this shit. And he's looking out the window and he's like, yeah, Ren never showed up and, blah, blah, blah. And so it looks like she's going to try to seduce him or so, but she's like, oh, I've been thinking about you or whatever. And he sits down. He's got Daria's gun, her gun. And she's like, what's going on? And what I think is a really cool scene here just basically is that he's like, yeah, I killed Jack. She's like, what? And then he like grabs her and he's like, I want you to listen to something. And he plays the basic tape that kind of goes back where you hear Jack and Daria, the ones that were making goo-goo eyes at each other in the diner. They were trying to basically screw him over. He was ahead of them one step at a time, two steps at a time, if you want to call it that. Doppledale at least got his shit on point. And so it's kind of neat to me, too, because in this scene, even though she's kind of hot and seductive, she knows she's going to die. She's terrified. He's physically restraining her. He gives her, it seems like out of nowhere, a little smack to the face and bloodies her nose a little bit. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. This guy's not taking any shit, but he's under control. He's not wild. And then because we got to have a bit more violence in Twin Peaks here, he does kill her. And what is neat about the way that it happens is right before he does, he's like, do you know what this is? And he shows her what's supposed to be the ace of spades, except for the giant spade and the deck of cards figuring that we're all used to. It's been modified, and I don't know how else to call it, except for it looks like a little puppy head thing or something. I really don't know what.
You know what it reminds me of?
What?
It reminds me of the mark of whenever we went in the cave for the first time.
Oh, on the petroglyph.
Mm-hmm. It looks like
it's not quite the ring either that we haven't seen yet or talked about, the one that he took off the table. So yeah, that's a good call. Now that you say that, that makes sense.
It just looks like it's a rounded version of that. So,
well, he basically snuffs her out. He puts the pillow over her face, pulls the trigger, boom, and we just see a shot of her laying there in her beautiful lingerie with a pillow on top of her head. And when he pulled it back, the pillow for a second, or just to look at her face to make sure the job was completely. And again, bad CGI or not, I thought it was a nice little touch. You see a little bit of her brains blown out on the other side, but you see a little smoke coming through it too. And I'm like, that's just a nice little gruesome touch, because you don't need a ton of kills, but you need some of them that are just really good. But what he does here before he goes to leave is he connects up this little contraption device he has. It looks like it's in a mil-spec suitcase. Samsonite on steroids for the old school folks there too, but he's breaking into a federal prison online and checking things out. So while they're in Buckhorn, which is on the state line, this Yankton Federal Prison's on the river on the other side of the state. And so it's like, okay, I don't know what's going on with this too, but he obviously has a specific plan of mind. Everything's going where he's not stressed at all. He goes next door. Some how do I describe her? This woman wearing she gives off a trashy vibe, but she's not ugly. She's giving off a vibe about something she's got a gun on too, and she's like, okay, boss. And he's basically telling her, and again, this is one long extended scene, and I'll stop after that too. But he's basically telling her that, yeah, this is how things are going or whatever. And he's like, but I'm going to need you to be in a certain place in a few days, which of course makes us think that the prison. But I just like how Chantal's her name. She's got to clean up stuff, so he's got people that we don't even know about. That's how extensive his plan is, which somehow is related to Hastings or whatever.
You're missing one scene.
I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get to one thing here in a second because I'm going in order before I mention the one big point that I caught too. She kind of is up to him and he's sitting on the edge of the bed. He's like, well, it's nice to see you're nice and wet or whatever like that. Like, and she's, he'd made a comment about her husband. So he's obviously pounding everybody that he can because again, in Twin Peaks, it might as well be called Boning Peaks because everybody in Twin Peaks bones a lot. But yeah, I guess the actor who played Major Garland Briggs had passed at the time of this, before this had gotten filmed. Unfortunately, Log Lady had passed a few days, I guess, after her scenes were shot. So I don't know if her acting is acting or just she was in pain. But the bottom line is these things happen as we get older, whatever. But he was listening to a tape as he was doing the break into the federal prison, and you hear a voice on there about meeting with Garland Briggs about something. And I was like, God damn it, I was really hoping we'd see him in here, but we can't. So we at least know that somehow Garland Briggs was tied to this. Maybe that'll play out as this plan unfolds, whatever the plan's going to be.
Yep, and it seems like his own plan might get a little screwy because whenever he was talking to Philip, or who was supposed to be Philip on the other line, he wasn't sure. At one point, he wasn't convinced. Wait a minute, is this Philip? Whatever his last name was, and that's when it hangs up. But we leave the real world and go to the place that Doppledale doesn't want to go. He has a plan to avoid the Black Lodge, and he's fighting it. So we go to the real Dale, back to the arm. The arm tells him to remember the numbers 253 and that it's time again. It calls Bob's name, and then it tells Cooper he needs to go now. So he walks out and to the previous room, but he can't enter it. Like he tries to push against the curtain, but it stops him. So he walks back, and the arm is gone from the room he was just in. And he walks through and enters another hall. And that's where Leland is waiting. He's sitting down, and he tells him to find Laura. Dale goes from there and continues as a white light flashes. He enters directly into the next room rather than going through a hall, as the lodge seems to glitch around him. The one-armed man, we see him again with the arm, and he says something is wrong. And the arm says, "It's my doppelganger." Dale enters yet another hall where the statue stands at the end. He moves towards to where he would enter another room, opens the curtain, but he sees a road. He sees the outside world, and on that road we see Doppledale driving his car. And that's when, from the statue, the arm's doppelganger appears, shaking the hall violently. The floor, which is zigzags, is the black's rising while the white is falling, and it keeps shifting between the two. And that's when the floor comes apart, as Dale's told by the arm's doppelganger, non-existent, before appearing in a glass box outside. He phases down into the box itself and floats into the room where nobody's there, but we recognize this place. It was in the last episode.
Yes.
So no one's on the couch, but the door is open, and we see Buzzcut. I believe his name was Sam from last time, and it's the exact same scene. He comes out of the bathroom, the guard's not there, and he says, "That's weird." The girl asks if she can come in, and he says, "Yeah, no one's there to stop him." The area then starts shaking around Dale, shifting. And within the black box, darkness surrounds Dale before he is then pulled away and deep into what looks to be space.
Yeah, two things. This whole thing with Mike and Bob, obviously, we talk about having symbolism and everything too. The tree thing kind of screws with your brain because you're like, wait a minute, this is really the spirit that inhabited this person, Philip Gerard, who cut his arm off, but that's also really the vertically challenged individual that would do his little dancing routine that we saw a few times. Just like the giant is somebody else too. I think the milk waiter, that we saw in season 2. So it's hard sometimes to put all these things together and go, okay, now that I know they're all the same thing, what's really happening? Because, okay, I get this is the evolution of the arm of your spirit, which was Mike. I'm not going to say good spirit, but obviously anti-Bob spirit. And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess he could have a doppelganger as well, but I don't know why we would have it now, because it's like the tree almost is like coming alive rather than talking. It's like possessed. It's kind of weird looking. You're like, wait a minute, obviously they can see into our world from where they're at. Because and the bronzer, like I say, that Doppledale is wearing, driving on the desert in a sports car in the middle of the day. Oh my God, he looks fantastic. Those big black, no pupil eyes, just are all pupil. It looks tremendous too. But yeah, we're going, okay, this is going on while what we saw in the last episode, which seemed like it was so long ago, but we get a quick scene of Sarah Palmer in her house at night. And she's just watching like all that kill footage that they show late at night back in the day, like lions killing animals and stuff. And she's just got, the thing of cigarettes and everything she's drinking. Nothing happens. It's just saying, okay, here's Sarah Palmer. We do know, though, and we've mentioned that there were some people in Twin Peaks, Sarah Palmer being one of them, that would get visions, like say, seeing the white horse, or even Bob, actually, she saw too and visualized it. Don't know if that means anything too, but we get a quick scene at the end, which I think is supposed to be important because it introduces a few other characters. It's at the Roadhouse. You got a band playing a song. Shelley, who's aged magnificently, is there with a bunch of girlfriends. It's the Cougar Crew sitting down. And our boy, James Hurley, who also has aged very well, comes in, and he's with some guy who's got an accent, Fred or whatever. I don't know.
In a green glove.
Well, yeah, I don't know if that's noteworthy. We don't know because it's the first time I recall seeing this guy. But he's checking out like Shelley or one of the ladies there with Shelley, because Shelley seems to be like the one in charge of the table, and the music's playing, and it's a nice little kind of like call back to your times here at the Roadhouse or whatever. And what's neat to me too is we talked about last episode, and it's really noticeable in this scene here. Similar to when Cooper was eating his cream corn, or Doppledale, I should say, at the table with the three amigos. There was stuff that if you saw the eye contact going on between the two people there that tried to turn on him. Here, you see not just that James is checking out a friend, but the way it's shot. You see in the back somebody wearing a beard that's basically all white, and it's Jean Reno, and he's serving drinks. So he's working at the Roadhouse. At least it's the same actor. I believe it's supposed to be the same character, I guess, because I don't think he died. He just partied with Laura and didn't die. And it's been 25 years, so I don't know if something happened and he served time. But he's here. So that's like, wait, oh, wow.
Wait. Jacques?
No, there's two of them, remember?
Yeah, Jacques was the one that partied with Laura and then died, got killed by Leland.
Did he get killed by Leland?
Yes. He was suffocated with a pillow.
Okay, because the actor who played him is there at the bar, so I might have to research that, because I'm trying not to go ahead. I don't know. I haven't seen these episodes, and you haven't either. But it looks like the same actor to me. The real scuzzy-looking, obese person, okay? Calorically challenged individual, let's say. I don't mean to offend anybody with that, but it's clearly the same actor. And since he didn't really have actors, I think, portray other ones, changing it up, I don't know what to make of that. But while it's going on, too, there's some guy. This is a decent-looking man. He's him and Shelley are making goo-goo eyes at each other, and he does like a little finger bang thing at her or whatever, which to me is always a bit douchey and not a cool thing, but obviously they seem to know each other or have some sort of history. So that's it before it, it does its close off. Instead of the picture Laura Palmer with the moody music, we have some song playing with the credits rolling. But yeah, that's last scene made me go, wait a minute, I thought he died, because I didn't go back and watch it, but certainly looks like it to me. What was your take?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure if it's the same actor, I guess he's a new character, because Jacques definitely did die. But
Jacques was the one that had the accent, correct? With Blackie?
No, that's Jean. That's Jean Reno.
Gotcha. So it's okay, but okay. I don't. I'm like I say. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm interrupting.
No, it's fine.
This just pissed me off because I was like, wait a minute. I thought he died.
Yeah. No. He did die. So I'm confused. I didn't notice that. I guess I wasn't paying attention to the bar. There was a table of attractive women, Rob. I had my priorities. No, but that scene, I like it. I feel like there's some disconnect, and it could be a problem with Twin Peaks missing some Twin Peaks, because we're dealing with a lot of stuff outside of the actual town itself.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm really interested in the stuff that's going on. I feel like we need to get in tune with the people of Twin Peaks again, though, because I have no idea what's happening. I don't know why Shelley's at the Roadhouse with... Honestly, the table didn't look like they were all her age. Maybe one other woman looked like she matched her age. The other two looked really younger. So it really reminded me of a slightly older woman trying to relive her youth with...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean.
That's what it looked like to me. And there's another person at the bar with a leather jacket on, and I couldn't tell who that was supposed to be.
Yeah, finger bang guy.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, and I'm unsure, and I really want to know.
Guy. Yeah, he's having a beer and he's looking at Shelley, and he does the little boom thing right at her.
Yep, we need some answers, and hopefully we'll get them. One thing that I'm going to take this moment to say is I miss the old end credits. Whenever we would have the picture of Laura, the music playing, and maybe that's just because I didn't care for the song that was playing in the Roadhouse.
I didn't mind it. It was what it was. You said something that we'll close on, I think is pretty interesting. So 2 episodes in now, obviously we're dealing with a lot of, maybe even the majority of characters that were at least A or B level in Twin Peaks. And we've been exposed to several of them, Hawk, Log Lady, and they're going to serve their purpose, which I like. It does make you feel connected. I do agree that the disconnect is a little jarring because the majority of this is outside of Twin Peaks. I, however, have no issue with it because a lot of time has passed. I don't need to spend all 18 episodes in Twin Peaks. And I'm not saying I would hate that either, but I like the idea that somehow this is all related and has to go back. And I'll disagree with you about the Laura Palmer thing because this so far apart, that happened 25 years ago. And just like the real world, people forget. It doesn't have the same impact that it may have only when people think about it. But I think we'll see how that develops and how much time we end up spending in Twin Peaks. But I think what we're seeing is the characters that went through all that, we're seeing what their current issues are today, their situations, and how they relate. And like we said with Twin Peaks, the murder of Laura Palmer was fairly cut and dry, if you want to look at it. And we briefly argued about whether spirits are just a convenient way of saying, of like sexual abuse or just a guy making something up. Of course, there's a lot of stuff going on, but really, father abused his daughter and took advantage of her for years, and was a bad dude, Leland Palmer. Why he did that is all this weirdo stuff, which actually we got away from in season 2. Season 2 was all these B-level characters, so it didn't really deal with anything too much until the very end. So in a way, this almost feels like more of a season 1 kind of than season 2, but yet we're getting the season 2 stuff first because we're getting a lot of characters we don't know and just a quick glimpse of the ones that we do know. So I'm actually I'm actually pleased by the restraint so far because, like you, I have no idea what the hell is going on. I just know, damn it, Principal Hastings, somehow he's related to Doppledale, and I want to know how. And I'm going, well, what the hell? Remember the early scene in season 3, episode 1, last week's episode, where we just saw somebody getting a bunch of shovels, Dr. Jacoby. It's like, what the hell? What the hell does this have to do with anything? He's out in a trail in the middle of nowhere. I'm excited about what's going on here, and while it's not a murder, what's replacing that for me is the whole, okay, it looks like it's going to be a conflict between Doppledale and Dale, flipping scripts, as it were. I need to go here and you need to come here. How's that going to happen? And how does this relate to the principal? I like it. It is different. And I agree with you. There's a disconnect. However, I'm not going to suggest that's a bad thing. I definitely have liked these two a lot more than I thought it was, to be honest with you. What's your final take?
I enjoy it too. I think because of how I saw episode 1 and episode 2 together, I had to keep moving. But I really do enjoy the things that are going on. I'm really interested in seeing where it goes. I just wish we could connect to Twin Peaks again. And if we don't soon, I'm a little worried about how long we can go on before we actually get to, part of the focus of the show.
Well, remember, he's got 18 episodes and it was all written out and he was involved in everything too. So I believe we'll end up there with what you're saying. I don't know how long it'll take, but I imagine we'll be there maybe sooner rather than later. So we'll see. And if not, we'll be curious to see how it goes. This is the whole thing with David Lynch. Some people love him. Some people hate him. Some people say, yeah, stuff is good except for the weird stuff he does, but he does what he does and we enjoy it. And I have to say, the fact that it was on Showtime and able to be completely from cradle to grave his baby makes me appreciate season 1 a lot more. And I'm not going to dump on season 2 hard, but we all know it's not nearly the quality of season 1. So hopefully this will meet or exceed season 1 expectations. All right, I'd like to thank everybody for listening here. Season 3, episode 2 of Twin Peaks, with Professor Pixel, of course, for showing up tonight. We've gotten a few comments from some people curious about Professor Pixel, the millennial man, the early 20-somethings, reaction to things because he'd never seen this before. I remember seeing season 1 and season 2 live as it happened. Have not watched it since in almost 30 years. Season 3 I'd never watched. And as we go through this weekly, we'll see what we can do as far as advancing in conspiracy theories about the show and see if there's anything new that David Lynch introduces in here. Because right now we're picking up where we left off. Haven't missed a beat. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a good night. And as always, stay extreme.